County and Alex improving. But why did it take a federal judge and Brooke Wiseman and others, Dave Durant, to jump on the Board of Supervisors to get them to go in this direction? Where were you guys prior to this? You were sitting on all this money. The legend is that there's $750 million that you spoke at the Anaheim City Council.
Yeah, in fact, Dave Carter played when I came to court that first hearing. I think it was the first hearing. One of the first hearings.
Can I finish what I'm?
Of course.
Yeah. So just the fact that it took somebody to light a fire under all of you to get going. Where was everybody before that? Why did you suddenly get this religion about the homeless from Dave Carter's I don't understand.
So let me answer your question straight up. Because the Board of Supervisors in the County of Orange was derelict in its duties. That's number one. Number two, I came to Anaheim, and I was the one that exposed on the record that they were sitting on money.
Right.
And they denied it for the longest time, and it finally came out. Number three, I agreed to two things before even the lawsuit. One of them before the lawsuit, and that was Kramer. City of Anaheim came to me. It was Jordan Brandon who came to me and said before he was turned down or whatever. Jordan came to me with the city. What? Okay, well, you guys, I know we had all different politics, but what I'm just telling you is fact. Jordan and others came and said, "Hey, listen, we found a location," and so we put Kramer, and that was way before the lawsuit. So I agreed to put the first shelter in my district, and I stood up in front of larger crowds than this, 1,000 people at a local church that's over in the industrial complex near Kramer. And I said, this is what we have to do. It's the right thing to do, and we're going to do it. And the diocese and the Catholic community was huge in bringing support for that. So I did stand up. And number two, not far from here on Anita Street, in my district, I've agreed over objections of those businesses that are on Anita Street at the 57. We are building, we own the building, we bought the building, and we're gonna have the first 24/7 year-round psychiatric facility to treat the mental illness from A to Z. So my friend, we've never had that, okay? And so I agree we need to do more, and we are gonna do more. Brooke's right. We had closed session yesterday about settlement discussions, and we're working on a document for potential settlement, which is great. But the fact of the matter is two things. As a lawyer, I know that change comes from the judicial branch and from lawsuits. That's how you get change, okay? Okay, Brown versus Board of Education. There's a lot of things that happen, and that's why I became a lawyer. It's why Brooke became a lawyer, because we wanted to use the law to get change. But politics drives change too. Elected officials in offices drive change too.
Okay, with that in mind, would you, as district attorney, would you investigate the Board of Supervisors for a lot of their misdeeds?
Okay, so let me talk about that. So the reason I'm not taking endorsements, again, to reiterate, is because the district attorney is beholden to no one. And one of the reasons my colleagues, three of my colleagues, one of them, Sean Nelson, is supporting me. One of the reasons three of my colleagues have not endorsed me is because they like the status quo. There's no investigation of political corruption in this county. Wow. There hasn't been for 20 years.
Wow.
Or longer.
No, not since Capizzi.
Oh, no, Mike Capizzi, slow down a second, my friend. Mike Capizzi didn't win judge in this county because he went after people who were allegedly engaged in political corruption.
Rohrabacher and Baugh.
All I'm saying is that when they faked signatures in the parking lot of the registrar's office, Rhonda Rohrabacher was one of those people who was prosecuted and she was convicted. So let's understand that at least we had some history, but for 20 years, my opponent ran on a platform 20 years ago that he would not prosecute political corruption. He ran on that platform.
Yeah. And he kept that promise.
All right, let me, so Teresa, and then Jose, and then Frank, and Luis, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
And I'm just gonna add to what you're talking about, the victim, because we were not allowed in.
To the victim's march, right?
They also had to RSVP.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
So people did RSVP.
And three of them
still
did.
Turned away. They still couldn't go in, even if they did respond. But I have two questions. My first question is, as a district attorney, especially now that some laws are changing, would you prosecute law enforcement who have shot and killed someone?
So there's a little more to that. So the question is, would I prosecute somebody in law enforcement, police officer? Hold on, Brian, let me, I get it. This is a couple things. No one is above the law, even if you're a sworn peace officer. No one. Okay, I was a sworn peace officer for 10 years. I saw a lot of things. I was there for the Rodney King riots because I was LAPD. I was there for a lot of civil unrest, okay? Cops don't get it right a lot of the time, there's no doubt about it. Sometimes it's just the stress of the moment and the intensity and things go wrong. But let me give you Kelly Thomas as a direct example. So Kelly Thomas is the homeless man that was killed in Fullerton. Ron Thomas, the father, has endorsed me. Just like Paul Wilson's endorsed me, who is the husband of one of the victims of the Seal Beach shooting. Endorsed me, because they're not getting justice in this county. Let me tell you what should have happened in that case. Those cops were intentionally overcharged with murder. Overcharged intentionally. Why? Why?
Because they would lose.
So they would get an acquittal. There are things in trial called lesser included offenses. And the defense can say, hey, judge, we were not guilty of second degree, but we are guilty of manslaughter, which is it's included, right? It's got all the elements of the crime, and it like a puzzle, but it fits right below. You know why John Barnett didn't ask for the lesser included? Because he knew his clients would get convicted on manslaughter. What's the difference between murder and manslaughter? Murder is you woke up, you got to the locker at Fullerton PD, you put on your uniform, you looked in the mirror, you brushed your hair, and you said, I'm going to go out and kill a homeless man today. That's murder. This is, hey, we went to a call, we saw Kelly Thomas. Hey, Kelly, as you're putting on your gloves, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to F you up. Remember that part? But Rakakis did a press conference and he said this, hey, I'm going to F you up. The rest of the sentence was, unless you listen to me. The district attorney calls a press conference every single time and tries his cases in the media. That is a violation of the American Bar Association rules. You don't try your cases in the media. We have a system of justice. You try your cases in the courtroom. You don't put out all your evidence ahead of time. So in that case, and I've already talked to Ron about this, the officer should have been charged with manslaughter. They would have been convicted. That's a situation where you did something, it got out of control, you lost control of yourself, and you killed somebody. And they would have been convicted, and guess what? They would never be able to be police officers again in the state of California. But instead, one of the officers is asking for his job back at Fullerton PD. Okay? And they might get it. So the point is, no one is above the law, and I have no problem at all prosecuting police officers if it's appropriate. Not at all. Not at all. It's the right thing to do.
Let me ask
It's
you
just the
remaining
second part of that. I just want to ask you one more thing on the victim witness. You know, there are victims, and you know about Marcy's Law. Victims are supposed to be notified if somebody's getting out of prison,
Correct.
especially if it's a sexual offense. Well, your victim witness program, or not yours, but the victim witness program right now, isn't doing that for a lot of victims. You're not even helping victims now who are fighting. I have a friend who's, and I've talked about this here, about a friend whose daughter was kidnapped and tortured and killed, you know. And the district attorney's not telling her anything. I mean, it's like, I think they should be working with the victim to let them know where they're at in the case. So, I mean, these are the things that, like you said, you're supposed to be, DAs are supposed to be doing their job. We know the current one doesn't do his job. He doesn't. So, I mean, you're saying this, that you're gonna do all these things. I'm gonna hold you accountable.
Well, I know that. I met for 3 hours with her and the ACLU to go through my platform so that they would understand with a lot of time exactly where I stand. But let me make something clear about victims. That is my thing. I mean, I'm a harsh victims advocate. And if you're against the DA's office and you're a victim, you have the same voice as somebody who may support the DA's office. But by my example of Paul Wilson endorsing me and Ron Thomas endorsing me, who both went through the system under Rakakis, that should tell you that they're not protecting victims. One of the first hires I will make as district attorney is a victims ombudsman. There will be a person in the DA's office who will do nothing other than coordinate the victim services with the victims and take every single complaint or grievance that's brought to the attention of the district attorney, and that person will directly report to me. They won't have to go through a filter. They will have direct line of communication to me.
How
because
big would
that's
that, how big would that office be? Because one person can't do it all.
Well, no,
All right,
because
so let me so we have three folks, and I'm just really mindful of the time because Gail, we scheduled her a long time ago, and I want folks to hear what she's doing about a lot of these things from the political community empowerment side. So we had, I think, Jose and Frank and Luis. I'm going to ask you, the three of you, to ask your questions, and then you can then go from there, Todd. So go
It
ahead,
might be
Jose.
4 years before we see him again. For re-election.
Well, that's for y'all to decide in the voting booth.
Yeah.
Jose.
Well, you know, you are definitely the better candidate than Tony Rackauckus. That goes without saying. I will say personally that I have been disappointed by the anti-homeless rhetoric that has helped to bring up, for example, when 2,000 Chinese immigrants and Irvine residents went to the county board of supervisors, chartered bust in, to be able to speak on this issue. That was, I don't think you did well on that, to feel this anxiety and kind of do this rhetoric about 10 cities that was not at all, about what was trying to be planned. But my question is, recently it came out that the members of the Unite the Right here in Huntington Beach, Rise Above movement, were prosecuted by the FBI, but the OCDA did not do anything, and it's been a pattern of kind of shielding, hate groups on the right and going after, Latino gang members or whoever, very heavily. So what are you going to do differently to prosecute these hate groups here in Orange County on the right?
well, in the last couple of weeks, I think I put out a lot of very strong statements about hate crimes in Orange County. I don't believe that hate crimes are being prosecuted in our county. I was a board member of the Anti-Defamation League for a decade. All right, I grew up. I know maybe I don't look like it now, but when I grew up, I was fat, acne, very awkward kid, okay? And I got pushed around and bullied a lot when I was in school. I had a knife pulled out on me in 8th grade. And so I'm very, very sensitive of so that's why I started working out, and I grew up a little bit, and I became a police, I did things in my life to overcome my insecurities, quite frankly. And so I feel like I'm a big champion for the people that can't take care of themselves. And this Tyson Mayfield dude, man, he had to be brought into court in chains the other day. He has to take his own van from the jail. He's so dangerous. And I'm thinking, they're treating this guy like this, but they let him out on a 2-month sentence to go after the African American community and the Persian community. If you look at the Orange County hate crime report that just came out for 2017, hate crime's up 3 years in a row. Yeah. Nothing's happening in this county, which is why I started to make a big deal. I wrote an op-ed in the paper. Maybe you don't read it at the Register, but I wrote an op-ed and it said, why in the world are we just talking about hate crimes now, 90 days before an election? You know why Rackauckus is only talking about hate crimes now, right? They defaced a veterans wall in Santa Ana, and he did a press conference in front of it. Well, I get it. That's a physical thing. It shouldn't be defaced. But you have real people who are getting beat up on the streets, and they're not getting protection. Okay? So where's the press conference on that? So absolutely. There will be no white supremacists in this county. I'll give you another quick example.
I'm going to stop you there because
Yeah.
only because of time.
All right, Jose.
Frank.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I'm glad you're running. I'm glad finally somebody's challenging the DA, because like you said, he's been there 20 years. And unfortunately, some people think that they can be there forever, no matter what they do. And it's shameful what he's been doing all these years. So I'm glad we have a very good candidate and a very good possibility of replacing him. So I'm just glad. I don't want to ask you any questions. I already heard more than enough.
I appreciate it. Good night.
But
Right, Luis,
Okay, I do have a question.
final question.
In your comments, you have brought up several times the issue of race and crime. But you have not brought up the issue of class and and privilege. And we know historically that a privilege have a way of getting away with more things than the lower classes. What will you do about the issue of race and class and make justice more evenly in the county?
All right, so I appreciate that question, and let me tell you this. My opponent had no women in his top executive management until I shamed him in a press release that he was not promoting women. He's not promoting minorities. There were no African American or Latin representation anywhere in his administration. If you don't bring people into your administration in positions of power who have come from those places, like I was a high school teacher at Roosevelt High, right? I taught 10th and 12th grade English. I taught kids whose parents never left the fields, let alone finish high school. Most of them didn't finish 8th grade, right? But these kids have gone on to college, they've gone to law school, and they're now making a difference in their community. The district attorney has a duty to hire and promote people who reflect the complexity and the complexion of the community, so that you indoctrinate the entire office with a sensitivity about prosecution, and that you're sensitive about who you charge, and that you don't overcharge. We know that happened in LA with LAPD on racial profiling, who they used to pull over, right, for car stops and things like that. The thing is, when you're old school, I'm not old school. If you're old school like my opponent, you don't think that stuff goes on, man, because you've been around so long and you're so out of touch. You don't have any connection to the community. You can't just appoint an Asian American or Hispanic group to come in and advise you once a year, pat them all on the head and say, thank you very much for that information, and walk out of the room and feel like you've connected with the community. You can't do that. You have to be willing to go into the community and have a conversation. They're not always pleasant. Look, guys, I get it. You have been so gracious, because you could have kicked my ass today if you wanted to. But you did it. You did it, Brian. Thank you.
You're gonna come regularly, right?
Of course, Vern. We are going to continue to have a dialogue, and you are going to always tell me and report. And I'll close with this.
Yeah, well, thank you. You address the issue of race well, but not class.
Well, in terms of class,
Yes, economic class.
Judge Kavanaugh, the discussion with Judge Kavanaugh for the affirmation of the Supreme Court is all about class right now.
Right.
The reason he's getting the benefit of the doubt is because he and even Dr. Ford, they grew up as kids in country clubs. They met each other at private schools. They only associated with certain people in certain schools because, God forbid, they had to get out beyond the gates of their private communities and actually interact with other people. Some of these people are so out of touch with mainstream America, it's unbelievable to me. And I'm listening to this, and irrespective of where you side on the issue, the fact that these are the people we're putting in our highest positions of power, who grew up in these enclaves, so disassociated for the rest of America, really troubles me, okay? That's not representative of who you need to have on the highest court in the land. So I'll close with this.
Hold on, because I do have a question for you,
Oh.
so we can close up and we can transition. There's a lot, you're right, we could ask a lot of things about a lot of things. For anyone who reads the headlines, not just the register, but the voice of OC. So I would just encourage folks to look at the supervisor's voting record. That's really important on some really important issues where I think you've done amazing work, and then other areas where I think it begs a conversation, but we don't have that time this morning. But I do really appreciate how you said, I'm not taking endorsements from people who are currently running, right? So you're taking
Or
endorsements.
hold office now.
Or hold office now. So Sean Nelson endorsed you, he holds office now.
No, he's not. When I get sworn in, he will not be in
Oh, right,
office.
okay. Who won't be holding office when you swear in?
Correct,
Right, thank you.
right, yeah.
And I think that's huge. That is really huge and quite courageous in a political environment where, like you said, people either trade money, if you're talking about business and electeds, or they trade favors as electeds to support each other. But that shouldn't stop if you get elected. So will you pledge today that as DA, you will not endorse anyone in any races throughout the county?
Correct.
Including your own seat, because you'll be vacating your seat. So will you as DA cease the practice of the DA's office of endorsing candidates who are running for office?
I've already made that pledge, so if I wasn't clear, then I need to be clear. The district attorney has no business taking endorsements or endorsing in elections.
So you'll be
None.
staying out of endorsements?
I'm going to be impartial above it because I have to judge the conduct of elected officials. And I don't want anybody to think there's a quid pro quo of this for that.
That's great to hear, because that's what we hear from judges. We've had judge candidates come and we get frustrated because they don't do that. But at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want people to at least have the perception that they're going to be fair. So thank you for that pledge. And also, so how often do you pledge to come back and visit our community here if you are elected?
So, you know, it's interesting because the Board of Supervisors has this unspoken policy that you're not allowed to go into other supervisors' districts. True, it's true.
Yeah, I believe it.
And so we try to be respectful about migrating or wandering, okay? Because we get accused of being improper. So poaching, yeah, it's poaching. So as district attorney, I will have the bully pulpit and represent the entire county. That means I can go anywhere and not have to deal with the stigma or the whispering of my colleagues saying, why were you, in this part of Anaheim, for God's sakes, And so it's ridiculous.
You're in a German restaurant.
Well, if you just move to the other side of the 57,
So let
but
me-
that's not why.
So just the time, so how
But the
often
answer
can
is
we
yes.
expect to see you if you're elected in this space?
I would
That's the
hope
question.
that you would invite me to have.
Anytime.
Or
No, slow down.
surprise us.
I will, listen, we will be here, absolutely. And I hope you would invite me to give an update on what's going on.
Come into the yo-yo.
Do the yo-yo.
I mean, you do it on
I'm gonna
other
wrap
people.
up. I'm gonna wrap
Let me
up,
close.
but
Now,
just to
let's close
clarify.
You were scared to
Final
come.
question.
Go
How
ahead.
come you're a Republican and talk like a Democrat?
So, it's funny because the question is, why am I a Republican talking like a Democrat? That's a great question.
Well, why are you a Republican?
So I grew up in a home. My mom burned her bra when Gloria Steinem basically, really started the women's movement in the 60s. We boycotted grapes and we boycotted lettuce in my family because of the spraying of migrant farm workers in the fields in those days and still to this day. When I was a high school teacher, I was told I had to teach certain books for 10th grade English. And instead I went to the book locker and I pulled out the plays of Luis Valdez and I taught the migrant farm worker plays. For the play, there's a requirement to teach plays in 10th grade.
What was the favorite play?
Well, they're all, you mean the name of the particular
Yeah,
play?
what was the favorite play that you found?
Dr. Moreno, I can't tell you one specific name, I
I'm
apologize.
just curious what you found.
But these plays were acted out on the back of people's trucks in the fields at night, right? When they were being social after a long, hard days of work. I have never been labeled in this county one way or the other. It's the reason why the Republican establishment does not want me to be district attorney. I want to say this again. The Republican establishment is not behind me to be district attorney of Orange County. And why? For this simple reason. Because I'm independent. I'll prosecute a police officer who's bad or dirty just like I would a Republican or Democrat. I'm going to bring something that's different that's never happened in Orange County. And that's transparency and objectivity and an openness to understand. I don't represent the Republican Party or anybody as a district attorney. My job is to call balls and strikes. An umpire is behind the plate. Now, sometimes you get mad at the umpire, but the umpire is there to be objective and fair. So I'll close with this. A couple kids are walking home from school and they confront an off-duty police officer in the city of Anaheim in front of his house. And he pulls his gun throughout that and he discharges his firearm.
That's crazy.
And thank God nobody was hit.
Nothing would happen.
That man should have been prosecuted.
And they didn't even confront him. He confronted
There was a crime
them.
that was committed. It was handled administratively by LAPD, but he got a pass. And the fact is, the district attorney's office called a press conference to explain why they weren't filing criminal charges. And this is what happens over and over in this county. Lawyers are smart people. We can argue anything to reach a conclusion. Believe me, we can figure out a path to get to a conclusion, but it doesn't mean it's the right conclusion. But what's happened, and the reason I need your vote, is because the public's got so complacent with this corrupt and bad district attorney, they don't have any expectations of anything other than that. You've gotten to the point, I appreciate your question because you've gotten so used to it, but for the first time in 20 years, there's a guy that came along that's now raised $2 million Yes, you would love this money, I know, dude, but I'm up on regular television today. Starting today, you will see me on 2 through 13. I've already been on cable for 3 weeks. I'm already on digital. We already spent $850,000 in the primary. I will be the next DA. I'm up 7 points in our tracking poll. This is an election we will win, and we will change this county. And we will have a different dialogue and a different voice, and it will be different. I promise you that. So God bless you all.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
Todd, just to summarize. Sorry, man. Sorry.
I just gave this closing argument. Now vote.
To summarize, as the jury goes to determine how it wants to vote, you made 3 commitments today. That's what we try to do when folks come in either as candidates or to come campaign for an issue that they think is important. It's commitments, right? Because we could all say a lot of things, a lot of important, incredible things you've said today, which I think is really, really cool. 3 commitments I heard today. One is that you're going to stop the practice of overcharging, and you're going to investigate that because you think it's unethical, both by the Bar Association but also your own value system, right?
Right.
And you said that if it comes out that in fact you ended up continuing that practice yourself, you would resign if that came out, right? That's the commitment you made. The second is that you would continue this amazing practice of not only not taking endorsements while you're running for office, but when others are running for office and you're the DA, you will not endorse any candidates for office in this county because you want to make sure that you're impartial.
As long
When
as
you're
the
in
DA has investigative jurisdiction over that office.
So county office, right?
County office.
So we'll just say county office.
Correct.
Statewide, that's a different question.
Correct.
So for any county office, local, school board, sheriff, those kind of things, you will not be party to any endorsement process or endorse anyone while you're in office if you're the DA.
That's
Yeah?
correct.
Okay, and the third is that you promise that you're going to return to Los Amigos to check in with us. And the invitation is always open. You're a member of Los Amigos. Put it on your resume. You can help or hurt. Because you said you were yo by Amin, right? So just a reminder of the membership that you have. But we would, can I ask, maybe you could come every 4 months?
Of course, every
or
quarter.
so, every
Sure,
quarter,
sure.
just to give us an update. But also, it's not just for accountability for you, but to us.
Sure.
What do we need to be doing to help you in this campaign to clean up the DA's office if you're so elected? So that's why we want you to return, and that's what a lot of electeds don't realize, is we also want to help them in the campaign that they ran on to actually implement the platform they promised. Those are the 3 commitments I heard today. Is that what you understand as your commitments today?
I made more, but you got 3 of them.
You did, but I'm Catholic, so I would go with 3. Right? So with that, thank you, Todd Spitzer. Folks, I'm gonna